I'm Doris. My student ID is S044131. I'm the freshman of NCUE. The video title is Melissa Fleming, a boat carrying 500 refugees stuck at sea, the story of two survivors. Every day I listen to harrowing stories of people fleeing for their lives across dangerous borders and unfriendly seas. But there's one story that keeps me awake at night, and it's about Dora, a Syrian refugee, 90 years old. She was living a grinding existence in Egypt, working day wages. Her dad was constantly thinking of his thriving business back in Syria that had been burned to pieces by bomb. In the war that drove them there was still raging in its first year, and the community that once welcomed them there had become wary of them. And one day, men on motorcycle tried to kidnap her. Once an aspiring student thinking only of her future. Now she was scared all the time. But she was also full of hope because she was in love with a fellow Syrian refugee named Bassem. Bassem was also struggling in Egypt, and he said to Dora, "Let's go to Europe, seek asylum, safety. I will work, you can study." The promise of a new life, and he asked her father for her hand in marriage. But I knew to get to Europe, they had to risk their lives, traveling across the Mediterranean Sea, putting their hands in smugglers, notorious for their cruelty. And Dawn was terrified of the water. She also had been. She never learned to swim. It was August that year, and already 2,000 people had died trying to cross the Mediterranean, but Dawn knew of a friend who had made it all the way to Northern Europe, and she thought maybe we can too. So she asked her parents if they could go, and after a painful discussion, they consented, and Bassem paid his entire life saving, $2,500 each, to the smugglers. It was a Saturday morning when the call came, and they were taken by bus to a beach. Hundreds of people on the beach. They were taken then by small boats onto an old fishing boat. 500 of them crammed onto the boat, 300 below, 500 above. There were Syrians, Palestinians, Africans, Muslims, and Christians. 100 children, including Sandra, little Sandra, 6 years old, and Masa, 18 months. There were families on the boat, crammed together to shoulder, feet to feet. Dawn was sitting with her legs crammed up to her chest, Bassem holding her hand. They too on the water. They were sick with worry and sick to their stomach from the rough sea. Day 3, Dawn had a premonition, and she said to Bassem, "I feel we're not going to make it. I feel the boat is going to sink." And Bassem said to her, "Please be patient. We will make it to Sweden. We will get married and we will have a future." Day 4, the passengers were getting agitated. They asked the captain, "When will we get there?" He told them to shut up, and he insulted them. He said, "In 60 hours we will reach the shores of Italy." They were weak and weary, so they saw a boat approach, a smaller boat. 10 men on board, who started shouting at them, hollering insults, throwing sticks, asking them to all disembark and get on this smaller, more unseaworthy boat. The parents were terrified for their children, and they collectively refused to disembark. So the boat sped away in anger, and half an hour later came back and started deliberately ramming a hole in the side of Dawn's boat, just below where she and Bassem were sitting, and she heard how they yelled that the fish eat your flesh, and they started laughing as the boat capsized and sank. The 300 people below deck were doomed. Dawn was holding onto the side of the boat as it sank, and watched in horror as the small child was out to pieces by the propeller. Benson said to her, "Please let go or you'll be swept in and the propeller will kill you too." And remember, she can't swim, but she let go and she started moving her arms and her legs, thinking, "This is swimming," and miraculously, Benson found a light ring. It was one of those chest rings that they used to play in swimming pools and on calm seas, and Dawn climbed onto the ring, her arms and her legs dangling by the side. Benson was a good swimmer, so he held her hand and tread water. Around them were corpses. Around 100 people survived initially, and they started camping together in groups, praying for rescue. But when a day went by and no one came, some people gave up hope, and Dawn and Benson watched as men in the distance took their life vests off and sank into the water. One man approached them with a small baby perched on his shoulder, 9 months old, Malik. He was holding onto a gas canister to stay afloat, and he said to them, "I fear I am not going to survive. I'm too weak. I don't have the courage anymore." And he handed little Malik over to Benson and to Dawn, and they perched her onto the life ring. So now there were 3, Dawn, Benson, and little Malik. And let me take a pause in this story right here and ask the question, why do refugees like Dawn take this kind of risks? Millions of refugees are living in exile, in limbo. They're living in countries from a war that has been raging for 4 years. Even if they wanted to return, they can't. Their homes, their business, their towns, and their cities have been completely destroyed. This is the UNESCO World Heritage City, homes in Syria. So people continue to flee into neighboring countries, and we build refugees camps for them in the desert. Hundreds of thousands of people live in camps like this, and thousands more. Billions live in towns and cities, and the community, the neighboring country that once welcomed them with open arms and hearts are overwhelming. There are simply not enough schools, water systems, sanitation. Even rich European countries could never handle such an influx without massive investment. The Syrian war has driven almost 4 million people over the border, but over 7 million people are on the run inside the country. That means that over half the Syrian population has been forced to flee back to those neighboring countries hosting so many. They feel that the richer world has done too little to support them, and sales have turned into months into years. A refugee stay is supposed to be temporary. Back to Dawn and Benson in the water. It was their second day, and Benson was getting very weak. And now it was Dawn's turn to say to Benson, "My love, please hold on to hope. To our future we will make it." And he said to her, "I'm sorry, my love, that I put you in this situation. I have never loved anyone as much as I love you." And he released himself into the water, and Dawn watched the love of her life drown before her eyes. Later that day, a mother came up to Dawn with her small 18-month-old daughter, Martha. This was the little girl I showed you in the picture earlier with the life vests. Her old sister Sandra had just drowned, and her mother knew she had to do everything in her power to save her daughter. And she said to Dawn, "Please take this child. Let her be part of you. I will not survive." And then she went away and drowned. So Dawn, the 80-year-old refugee who was terrified of the water, who couldn't swim, found herself in charge of 2 little baby kids. And they were dirty, and they were hungry, and they were agitated. And she tried her best to amuse them, to sing to them, to say words to them from the crowd around them. The bodies were floating and tumbling back. The sun was blazing during the day. At night there was a cold moon and fog. It was very frightening. On the fourth day in the water, this is how Dawn properly looked on the ring with her two children. A woman came on the fourth day and approached her and asked her to take another child, a little boy, just 4 years old. When Dawn took the little boy and the mother drunk, she said to the sobbing child, "She just went by to find your water and food," but it had soon stopped, and Dawn had to release the little boy into the water. Later that day, she looked out into the sky with hope, because she saw two planes crossing in the sky, and she waved her arms, hoping they would see her, but the planes were soon gone. But that afternoon, as the sun was going down, she saw a boat, a merchant vessel, and she said, "Please, God, let them rescue me." She waved her arms, and she felt like she shot for about 2 hours, and it had become dark. But finally, the searchers found her, and they extended a rope, astonished to see a woman clutching onto two babies. They poured them into the boat. They got oxygen and blankets, and a Greek helicopter came to pick them up and take them to the island of Crete. But Dawn looked down and asked what of Malik, and they told her the little boy did not survive. She drew her last breath in the boat's cleaning, but Dawn was sure that as they had been pulled out onto the rescue boat, the little boy, baby girl had been smiling. Only 11 people survived the wreck of the 500. There was never an international investigation into what happened. There were some media reports about mass murder at sea, a terrible tragedy, but that was only for one day, and then the news cycle moved on. Meanwhile, in a pediatric hospital on Crete, little Massa was on the edge of death. She was really dehydrated. Her kidneys were failing. Her glucose levels were dangerously low. The doctor did everything in their medical power to save them, and the Greek nurses never let her sigh, holding her, hugging her, singing her words. My colleague also visited and said pretty words to her in Arabic. Amazingly, little Massa survived, and soon the Greek press started reporting about the miracle baby who had been survived for days in the water without food or anything to drink, and offers to adopt her came from all over the country. And meanwhile, Dawn was in another hospital on Crete, being dehydrated. An Egyptian family took her into their home as soon as she was released, and soon word went around about Dawn's survival, and a phone number was published on Facebook. Messages started coming in. "Dawn, do you know what happened to my brother, my sister, my parent, my friend? Do you know if they survived?" One of those messages said, "I believe you saved my little niece, Massa," and it had this photo. This was from Massa's uncle, a Syrian refugee who had made it to Sweden with his family, and also Massa's older sister soon. "We hope Massa will be reunited with him in Sweden, and until then, she's being cared for at a beautiful orphanage in Athens." And Dawn, well, what went around about her survival too, and the media wrote about this black woman, and couldn't imagine how she could survive all this time under such conditions in that sea, and still save another life. The Academy of Athens, one of Greece's most prestigious institutions, gave her an award of bravery. And she deserved all that praise, and she deserved a second chance. But she wants to still go to Sweden. She wants to reunite with her family there. She wants to bring her mother and her father and her youngest sibling away from Egypt there as well, and I believe she will succeed. She wants to become a lawyer or a politician or something that can help fight injustice. She's an extraordinary survivor. But I have to ask, what if she don't have to take that risk? Why did she have to go through all that? Why wasn't there a legal way for her to study in Europe? Why couldn't Martha have taken an airplane to Sweden? Why couldn't Benson have found work? Why is there no massive resettlement program for Syrian refugees, the victims of the worst war of our times? The world did this for the Vietnamese in the 1970s. Why not now? Why is there so little investment in the neighboring country hosting so many refugees? And why, the real question, is so little being done to stop the wars, the procession, and the poverty that is driving so many people to the shores of Europe? Until these issues are resolved, people will continue to take to the sea and seek safety and asylum. And what happens next? Well, that is larger Europe choices, and I understand the popular fears. People are worried about their security, their economies, the changes of culture, but is that more important than saving human lives? Because there is something fundamental here that I think overrides the rest, and it's about our common humanity. No person fleeing war or persecution and should have to die crossing a sea to reach safety. One thing is for sure, that no refuge would be on those dangerous spots if they could dive when they are, and no migrant would take the dangerous journey if they had enough food for themselves and their children, and no one would put their life saving in the hands of those notorious smugglers if there was a legal way to migrate. So on behalf of little Martha and on behalf of Don and Bethan and of those 500 people who drowned with them, can we make sure that they did not die in vain? Could we be inspired by what happened and take a stand for world in which every life matters? Thank you.